Natalie Brooks wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stood on the corner of Michigan Avenue in downtown Chicago. The summer heat was merciless, and the sidewalk felt like it was burning through her worn sneakers. She held up a cold water bottle, calling out to the rushing crowd of business professionals and tourists. "Ice-cold water, just $3. Stay hydrated in this heat." Her voice carried confidence despite her simple clothes and the heavy cooler strapped across her shoulder. Natalie had been selling water on these streets for 2 years while attending community college at night. Every dollar mattered. Every sale brought her one step closer to her dream of opening her own small cafe. She noticed the way some people looked at her with pity, others with judgment. But Natalie held her head high. There was no shame in honest work. Her mother had taught her that before she passed away 3 years ago. This job paid for her classes, her tiny studio apartment, and kept food on her table. The man in the expensive suit, Benjamin Carter, stepped out of his luxury sedan, adjusting his designer tie. He had just closed a major deal that would add another commercial building to his real estate empire. At 35, he had everything money could buy: penthouse apartments, exotic cars, and invitations to exclusive events. Yet something felt hollow inside him lately. As he walked toward his office building, a voice cut through his thoughts. "Sir, cold water! You look like you could use some refreshment." Benjamin turned to see a young woman with dark curly hair pulled into a ponytail. Her brown eyes sparkled with determination. Despite her modest appearance, she carried herself like someone who owned the world. Something about her caught his attention. "How much?" he asked, more out of curiosity than thirst. $3 for the coldest water in Chicago," Natalie replied with a grin. Benjamin reached for his wallet and pulled out a $100 bill. "Keep the change." Natalie's smile faded. She pushed the money back toward him. "I don't need charity. $3 for water or nothing at all. Pride meets." Privileged Benjamin was stunned. Nobody ever refused his money. People usually thanked him profusely for his generosity. This young woman looked at him like he had insulted her. "It's not charity. I'm just paying for good service," he said, trying to understand her reaction. "I provide the same service to everyone. $3. That's the price." Natalie crossed her arms, her expression firm. Benjamin found himself smiling despite the rejection. "You're quite stubborn." "I prefer the word principled," Natalie shot back. "There's a difference between accepting payment for work and accepting handouts. I work for what I earn." He pulled out exact change and handed it to her. Natalie gave him a bottle, their fingers briefly touching as she passed it over. Benjamin noticed her hands were rough from hard work, unlike the soft manicured hands of the women in his social circle. "What's your name?" he asked. "Natalie. And before you ask, no, I don't need a job at your company or whatever you're thinking. I'm doing just fine on my own," Benjamin chuckled. "How do you know I own a company?" "Expensive suit, confident walk, and that look in your eyes like you're used to people saying yes to everything. You're either a CEO or a lawyer. Either way, I'm not interested in pity." An unusual interest, Benjamin found himself thinking about Natalie throughout the day. Her fierce independence reminded him of his younger self before wealth made everything easy. He had grown up in a working-class neighborhood, building his empire from nothing. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what it felt like to struggle, to fight for every opportunity. That evening, instead of heading home to his empty penthouse, Benjamin returned to the same corner. Natalie was still there, though her cooler looked nearly empty. "Back for more water?" she called out when she spotted him. "Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to grab dinner." "There's a diner around the corner." Natalie laughed, a sound that was both skeptical and amused. "Let me guess. You feel bad for the poor street vendor and want to do your good deed for the day." "No," Benjamin said honestly. "I'd like to have dinner with someone who isn't afraid to tell me the truth." "That's rare in my world." Natalie studied him for a long moment. She had dealt with enough people to recognize sincerity when she saw it, even if it came wrapped in an expensive suit. Still, she remained cautious. "I don't have time for games or experiments where rich people try to feel better about themselves," she said. "Fair enough," Benjamin replied. "But I'm not offering charity. I'm offering conversation. You can pay for your own meal if that makes you more comfortable." A hesitant "yes," something in his tone made Natalie pause. Maybe it was exhaustion from the long day, or maybe it was curiosity about what made this wealthy stranger tick. Against her better judgment, she nodded. 1 hour. The diner on Clark Street, and I'm paying for my own food. Deal, Benjamin agreed. As they walked to the diner, Natalie kept her guard up. She had learned not to trust easily, especially when people seemed too good to be true. Benjamin, meanwhile, felt strangely nervous. When was the last time he had cared about making a good impression on someone? Inside the small diner, they sat across from each other in a worn vinyl booth. The contrast between them was striking. Benjamin in his tailored suit, Natalie in her faded jeans and simple shirt. Yet as they began to talk, those surface differences started to blur. Neither of them knew that this simple dinner would change both of their lives forever. The diner smelled like coffee and grilled cheese sandwiches. Natalie ordered a simple burger and water while Benjamin asked for the same, ignoring the surprised look from the waitress who clearly recognized his face from business magazines. "So what do you really want?" Natalie asked, her tone direct as she leaned back in the booth. "People like you don't just randomly have dinner with people like me." Benjamin took a sip of water before responding. "People like me? You've already decided who I am based on my suit. Am I wrong?" Natalie challenged. "You probably live in some fancy high-rise, drive a car that costs more than most people make in 5 years, and spend your weekends at country clubs." "You're partially right," Benjamin admitted. "But you're also wrong about something important. You think wealth defines who I am, but you're doing the same thing you're accusing me of. You're judging without knowing my story." Natalie felt a small pang of guilt. He had a point. She prided herself on being fair, yet she had made assumptions about him from the moment they met. "Okay," she said, softening slightly. "Tell me your story then." Stories from different worlds. Benjamin set down his glass and met her eyes. "I grew up in Southside Chicago. My father was a construction worker, my mother cleaned houses. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with my 3 siblings. I wore hand-me-down clothes and worked 2 jobs through high school." Natalie's eyebrows rose in surprise. This was not the story she expected. "I put myself through college with scholarships and loans," Benjamin continued. "Started my first business at 23 with money I saved from working construction during summers. It failed, lost everything. Started again at 25. That one worked. By 30, I had built something real." "So you earned your success," Natalie said quietly. "I can respect that. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to struggle," Benjamin admitted. "Everything became easy. People started saying yes to everything. I stopped connecting with real problems, real people, until I met you today." Natalie stirred her coffee, processing his words. "What made you stop and talk to me?" "Plenty of people sell water on the streets. Your fire," Benjamin said simply. "The way you stood up for yourself. You reminded me of who I used to be before comfort made me complacent." Natalie's truth. The food arrived, and they ate in comfortable silence for a moment before Natalie spoke. "My mother raised me alone," she began, her voice softer now. "My father left before I was born. Mom worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. She always told me that dignity comes from honest work, not from what people give you." Benjamin listened without interrupting. "She got sick when I was 19. Cancer. No insurance. I dropped out of university to take care of her and work full-time. She died 6 months later, leaving me with medical bills I'm still paying off." "I'm sorry," Benjamin said, and the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. "Don't be," Natalie replied, though her eyes glistened slightly. "She taught me everything important. How to stand on my own feet. How to never let circumstances define my worth. That's why I sell water and go to community college at night. I'm building my life my way, one step at a time." "What are you studying?" Benjamin asked. "Business management. I want to open a small cafe someday. Nothing fancy. Just a place where working people can afford good food and feel welcomed." Her face lit up when she talked about her dream. "Somewhere my mom would have been proud of." Benjamin felt something shift in his chest. Here was someone with so little, dreaming so practically, yet with such genuine passion. Meanwhile, he had everything and had stopped dreaming years ago. A generous interference over the next 2 weeks, Benjamin found himself returning to Natalie's corner every day. Sometimes they talked for a few minutes, other times they grabbed quick lunches together. He learned about her classes, her struggles with difficult professors, and her determination to graduate debt-free. What Natalie didn't know was that Benjamin had started making calls. He contacted the community college and anonymously paid off her remaining tuition. He arranged for a scholarship in her name for the next semester. He even spoke to the landlord of her building about fixing the broken heating system that had been ignored for months. Benjamin told himself he was just helping someone deserving. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Natalie had awakened something in him that had been dormant for years. A sense of purpose beyond accumulating wealth. The confrontation Natalie arrived at school one Monday morning to find a notice in her student account. All her fees were paid. Scholarship awarded for next semester. Her heart sank even as relief washed over her. She knew immediately who had done this. She marched to Benjamin's office building that same afternoon, still wearing her work clothes and carrying her empty cooler. The receptionist tried to stop her, but Natalie's determination pushed through every obstacle until she burst into Benjamin's top-floor office. Benjamin looked up from his desk, surprise flashing across his face. "You had no right," Natalie said, her voice shaking with emotion. "No right to interfere in my life." Benjamin stood slowly. "I was trying to help." "I didn't ask for your help." "Do you understand what you've done? You've taken away the one thing I had, my independence. My pride in earning my own way." "Your pride?" Benjamin's voice rose to match hers. "Natalie, you're working yourself to exhaustion. You barely sleep. I saw an opportunity to ease that burden. It wasn't your decision to make." Tears formed in her eyes, and she angrily wiped them away. "You're just like everyone else who looks at me and sees someone to pity. Someone who needs rescuing." A moment of understanding. Benjamin walked around his desk, his expression pained. "That's not how I see you. I see someone extraordinary, someone who works harder than anyone I know, someone who inspires me to be better." Natalie shook her head. "You don't get it. When my mother died, people tried to help. They offered money, charity, sympathy. But what I needed was respect. I needed to prove to myself that I could survive on my own terms. And you have proven that," Benjamin said gently. "Accepting help doesn't erase what you've accomplished. It doesn't make you weak. Coming from someone who has never had to accept help, that's easy to say." Benjamin was quiet for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He sat down on the floor of his expensive office and looked up at her. "You're right," he said. "I can't fully understand what you're feeling. But I'm learning. You're teaching me that there's more to life than writing checks and feeling good about it. You're teaching me about real strength, real dignity." Natalie slowly sat down across from him, the anger draining from her body. They sat on the floor of his office, two people from different worlds trying to bridge an impossible gap. "I need to pay you back," Natalie said finally. "Okay," Benjamin agreed. "But let me ask you something. If our situations were reversed and you had the money to help me pursue my dreams, would you?" Natalie thought about it honestly. "Yes, I would." "Then let someone do the same for you. Not because you're weak, but because you're worthy." Something in his words reached her. Maybe accepting help didn't mean losing herself. Maybe it meant trusting someone enough to let them care. The weeks following their confrontation brought unexpected changes. Natalie continued selling water, but she also accepted the scholarship. Benjamin had agreed to let her pay him back slowly, which satisfied her sense of independence, even though he had no intention of actually accepting the money. They began meeting regularly, not just for quick lunches, but for real conversations. Benjamin showed Natalie parts of Chicago she had never seen, not the expensive restaurants, but the hidden gems he remembered from his youth. Small family-owned places where the food was authentic and the atmosphere genuine. In turn, Natalie brought Benjamin back to reality. She took him to community centers where people struggled daily. She showed him the faces behind the statistics he read in business reports. Slowly, Benjamin's perspective began to shift. Wealth was not just about accumulation anymore. It was about responsibility and impact. A lesson in humility. 1. Saturday morning, Natalie invited Benjamin to volunteer at a local soup kitchen where she spent her weekends. He arrived in casual clothes, feeling strangely out of place without his usual armor of expensive suits. Ever served food before? Natalie asked with a teasing smile. I've attended charity galas where we wrote checks, Benjamin admitted. But actually serving people? This is new. Then today you learned something valuable, she said, handing him an apron. For 3 hours, Benjamin served meals to homeless individuals, struggling families, and elderly people living on fixed incomes. He listened to their stories, saw their dignity despite their circumstances, and felt humbled in a way no business deal had ever made him feel. An older man named Thomas sat down with his tray and looked at Benjamin with wise eyes. You're that real estate fellow, aren't you? I've seen your face in the papers. Benjamin nodded, suddenly self-conscious. Good to see you here, Thomas said. Money can build buildings, but it takes heart to build community. Don't forget that. Those words stayed with Benjamin long after they left the soup kitchen. Natalie watched him process the experience, seeing the transformation happening in real time. Opening old wounds. As they walked through a nearby park after volunteering, Benjamin stopped at a bench and sat down heavily. Natalie joined him, sensing he needed to talk. My father died when I was 28, Benjamin said suddenly. Heart attack on a construction site. He worked himself to death trying to provide for us. I was already successful by then, had offered him money to retire early. He refused. Natalie remained silent, letting him continue. He told me he was proud of what I had built, but he worried I was losing myself in the process. He said success without purpose was just accumulation. I didn't understand what he meant until he was gone. Benjamin's voice cracked slightly. I threw myself into work even harder after that. Built more, earned more, thinking that somehow achieving more would make sense of his sacrifice. But it just left me emptier. Natalie reached over and took his hand. He would be proud of who you're becoming now. How do you know? Benjamin asked. Because you're finally asking the right questions. Not how much can I make, but how much can I matter? A shared vision. Their conversation sparked an idea. Benjamin learned about Natalie's dream cafe and began asking detailed questions. What kind of atmosphere did she envision? Who would be her customers? What made it different from other cafes? Natalie's eyes lit up as she described her vision. A place where a construction worker can afford breakfast before work, where students can study without pressure to constantly buy things, where elderly people can gather without feeling unwelcome. Good food, fair prices, and genuine community. That's beautiful, Benjamin said. Have you looked at locations? I've been saving for years, but property in decent areas is expensive. It'll be a while before I can afford even a small space. Benjamin was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, What if we became partners? Natalie looked at him suspiciously. Partners? You have the vision, the passion, and the understanding of what the community needs. I have resources and business experience. We could create something meaningful together. I don't want charity disguised as partnership, Natalie warned. This wouldn't be charity. I'd be the investor, you'd be the operator. We split profits fairly. You make all decisions about the cafe's character and values. I handle the financial and legal aspects. Real partnership, equal respect. Natalie considered it. Every instinct told her to refuse, to do it alone as she had planned. But she was learning that accepting help from someone who respected her wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. I need to think about it, she said. Take all the time you need, Benjamin replied. While Natalie considered the cafe partnership, they started a smaller project together. Benjamin owned a vacant lot in a struggling neighborhood. Instead of developing it into expensive condos as his company recommended, he and Natalie proposed something different, a community garden and gathering space. They rallied volunteers, gathered donations, and spent weekends transforming the abandoned lot. Benjamin worked alongside construction crews, getting his hands dirty in a way he hadn't done in years. Natalie organized community meetings, listening to what residents actually wanted rather than imposing ideas on them. The project brought them closer. Working side by side, they developed a rhythm and understanding that went beyond words. Benjamin found himself laughing more, stressing less, and feeling genuinely fulfilled. Natalie discovered that letting someone in didn't diminish her strength. It multiplied it. One evening, as they painted a mural on the garden's entrance wall, Natalie suddenly spoke. I've decided about the cafe. Let's do it, together. Benjamin's face broke into a genuine smile. Really? Really? But we do it right. We create jobs for people who need them. We source from local suppliers. We make it sustainable and meaningful, not just profitable. I wouldn't want it any other way, Benjamin agreed. Love in unexpected places. As summer turned to fall, their partnership deepened into something neither had anticipated. The boundaries between business collaboration and personal connection blurred. They found themselves sharing not just plans, but fears, hopes, and dreams. One October evening, after a long day of finalizing cafe plans, they sat on the roof of Benjamin's building watching the city lights. The air was cool, and Natalie pulled her jacket tighter. Without thinking, Benjamin put his arm around her. Instead of pulling away, Natalie leaned into his warmth. "This is strange," she said softly. "What is? 6 months ago, I thought you were just another privileged person who couldn't understand real life. Now you're my partner, my friend, and something more I'm still figuring out." Benjamin turned to look at her. "You've changed my life, Natalie. You've reminded me why I started building things in the first place. Not for profit, but for purpose. And you've taught me that accepting support doesn't mean losing myself," Natalie admitted. "That letting someone care about me isn't surrendering my independence." Benjamin hesitated, then spoke from his heart. "I'm falling in love with you. I know that complicates everything, and I don't want to pressure you, but I needed you to know." Natalie was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Good, because I'm falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me." "Why does it terrify you?" "Because caring about someone means being vulnerable. It means trusting them not to hurt you or change you into someone you're not." Benjamin took her hand. "I don't want to change you. I love exactly who you are. Your strength, your stubbornness, your incredible heart. You've changed me for the better, and I hope I can support you in becoming even more yourself." Natalie kissed him then, soft and certain. It wasn't a fairy tale moment with fireworks, but something better. It was real, built on mutual respect and genuine understanding. New beginnings. 6 months later, Natalie's Corner Cafe opened its doors. The space was warm and welcoming, with mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, and prices anyone could afford. Benjamin had handled the business side, but every decision about atmosphere and values came from Natalie. The opening day was packed with people from the neighborhood, volunteers from the community garden, and even Thomas from the soup kitchen. Benjamin stood back, watching Natalie in her element, greeting customers with genuine warmth. She caught his eye across the room and smiled. He smiled back, feeling more content than any business success had ever made him feel. Benjamin had learned that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or properties. It was measured in connections, purpose, and the positive impact you had on others. Natalie had learned that independence didn't mean facing everything alone. It meant being strong enough to accept help while maintaining your values. Together, they had created something beautiful. Not just a cafe, but a partnership built on mutual respect. A love built on understanding and a future built on shared purpose. The wealthy stranger and the water seller had found each other against all odds. In the process, they had both become better versions of themselves. Their story was proof that transformation happens when two people meet with open hearts, when pride gives way to connection, and when different worlds collide to create something entirely new. As evening fell on opening day, they stood together watching their dream come to life. Two people from different worlds who had chosen to build a bridge between them, one honest conversation at a time. The end.